On Friday, officials from the White House COVID-19 task force testified before Congress on the response to the pandemic. This comes on the heels of another controversial press briefing given by President Trump on Thursday. So let's bring in CGTN's Jim Spellman, who joins us live from outside Washington. All right, Jim, let's talk about the congressional hearing first. What happened?
So testifying are the NIH's Dr. Anthony Fauci, CDC Director Robert Redfield, and the administration's testing czar. The chair of this committee, Jim Clyburn, a Democrat who's been quite critical of President Trump, says the U.S. response, quote, stands out among the worst of any country in the world. And Fauci testified that the United States never locked down to the same degree as other countries, and that's part of the reason why the country is in the shape it's in. Listen.
If you look at what happened in Europe when they shut down or locked down or went to shelter in place, however you want to describe it, they really did it to the tune of about 95+% of the country did that. When you actually look at what we did, even though we shut down, even though it created a great deal of difficulty, we really functionally shut down only about 50% in the sense of the totality of the country.
Fauci says we would have to do this again much more seriously to really stop this virus. The CDC's Redfield, who often is more aligned with President Trump, spoke out in favor of reopening in-person education at U.S. schools. He cited risks of kids not being in school, including the possibility of increased abuse of those kids at home and increases in substance abuse and suicide attempts by older students. Trump allies on this committee have tried to defend the administration, in part by blaming China for this crisis. Erica?
All right, Jim. So let's talk about how people are reacting to the Trump administration's response to the pandemic so far.
Yeah, so President Trump has continued to minimize this crisis. He'll try to sort of swing a little bit more towards taking what many public health officials consider to be responsible actions, then he'll swing back again. There seems to be more and more a sense that the administration is banking on a vaccine getting the United States out of this problem. Billions of dollars being spent to secure hundreds of millions of doses of vaccines that are not even yet proven to work. But best case scenario, a vaccine is ready late this year or early next year. But here's a reality check about what's happening right now. More than 1,000 Americans have died each of the last 4 days. As you mentioned earlier, over 150,000 total deaths, nearly 4.5 million cases. Today, about 30 million Americans who are unemployed because of this crisis will no longer receive supplemental protections that they have gotten, $600 a week from the federal government. And beginning next week, eviction proceedings can begin on many of them. Now, you can blame things like gridlock on Capitol Hill for some of this, but until the actual crisis, the public health crisis, is addressed, all of the rest of this will essentially be trying to put a Band-Aid on a bleeding wound. And we're getting new data now about what Americans think of this. An ABC poll released Friday finds only 34% of Americans approve of the job President Trump has done. 2/3 disapprove. Erica?